Another practical is train yourself to see past the front people put on. So this is sort of very similar. Train yourself to see their mythology. Look for signs of their true character or true signs of their character. How do we do this? The example you give in the book is Howard Hughes. He was actually a terrible businessman, but yet most people think of him as this like brilliant creator. And meanwhile, he was, according to the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, peeing in bottles in a room and made a plane that didn't fly, or at least didn't fly well.
Right. Well, the idea is that people have patterns in life, right? And the patterns reveal what I call their character. And character is something very deeply ingrained in a person. It's that genetic component we talked about earlier. It's the early education part of them. It's something so deep inside that they can't control it. And you have a character and I have a character. And what it does over time is it creates patterns. We end up falling into patterns in life, in our work world, in our personal relationships, etc. And you can see this over time. And that reveals that essence, that core that we are, often in a more negative light. And so Howard Hughes had this pattern of enticing people into this kind of business venture because he was very ambitious, very grandiose. And then he wouldn't deliver. And he wouldn't deliver for various reasons. One thing is he was an insane micromanager. He had to oversee every single detail of that plane, but he couldn't because he's only one person, and he'd get overwhelmed with information, and he'd become paralyzed, and the project would never happen. He would be asked to build 200 enormous transport jets for the Defense Department, and he'd build only one. The Goose, whatever the thing is.
Spruce Goose, I think was the name.
Yeah. Okay, because he was so paralyzed with he had to control everything, etc. And it spilled over into when he produced films and he directed films, and he had the same mentality. And each time it failed, and yet people would not pay attention to those failures because they got sucked in to the aura of Howard Hughes, this adventurer, this pilot who would risk his life doing things, which was true. He was very almost reckless in his flying planes, etc. So they bought the legend of Howard Hughes, and they weren't seeing the reality was that this man was an awful businessman. He was just a terrible businessman, right? And the clues were all there, and yet they were falling for the appearance of this really smooth, charismatic man. And it became comic by the end because he had 4 or 5 or 6 failures in his past, and still he managed to convince people up until like the 50s or 60s to fund his wild projects. So the idea is, to sum it all up, is stop paying attention to people's charm, their presence, their facade, to how excited they are when you first meet them, to their resume, to the fact that they went to Harvard or Yale, etc., and look at their character, what lies underneath. So if you looked at Howard Hughes' character, you would have seen someone deeply insecure and deeply controlling to the point where he could never finish anything. And if you saw that, you would have never signed on to one of his projects and lost millions of dollars, right? So people give signs of this. They give signs of their behavior. They give signs of the fact that they're not a team player. Character, I like to decide to judge, is either strong or weak. You want a strong character for a partner in an intimate relationship, for a business partner, for a colleague at work. A strong character can take criticism. That's the number one thing. A person who is strong inside can take criticism and can use it constructively. They don't become defensive. A strong person, when they're stressed, they don't crumble. They don't suddenly become this whiny little baby. They can handle it. They have presence of mind. A strong person can work with other people. They're not dominated by their ego. They don't have to have everything on their own terms. A weak character is all the opposite of those traits. So you hire somebody based on their charm, and then you discover when they're stressed that they crumble into pieces, right? You discover that when you criticize them, they get all whiny and defensive and they can't learn. You discover that they can't work together as a team. They only want to advance their own agenda. You learn that too late because they're already working for you. So judge them before you get involved with people. And I should talk in my books about how there are always signs what the underlying character is.
If you like that clip and you want to see more just like this, subscribe to our channel for more, or click on the videos on screen now. To see full-length episodes, check out our main channel in the description below.